Preaching on the Sundays of Advent feels something like shoveling sand against the tide. And the tide I'm talking about is what happened in most households as the Thanksgiving leftovers were made into sandwiches and the Christmas trees went up. It's amazing if you watch on social media, the transformation. As soon as the turkey is done, it's Christmas! And here am I in my purple clothes, shoveling sand against the Christmas tide out there. Actually, it's more than a tide, it's a tsunami. Christmas sights and sounds, holly and hoopla, selling and spending, eating and drinking, desires, big desires, and equally big disappointments, carols, Christmas carols and cocktails, giving and getting, hope and hopelessness. In the commercial imagination, and more I fear in the Christian imagination. Now by that I mean not what we're imagining while we're here together in prayer on Sunday mornings, but what we imagine Christmas to be as soon as we walk out of this place. In our common imagination, I think the jolly fellow from the North Pole seems every year to increase in his favorability ratings, while that one carpenter from Nazareth slips lower and lower in the polls, even on his birthday. So to help me in my shoving against the tide here, I'm going to invite you to join me in a little experiment. Let's try to imagine for a moment what Christmas would be like if we took away Santa and all the presents under the tree. If we didn't write any Christmas wish lists. If we didn't do any shopping or wrapping. If we didn't put up any Christmas lights or decorations or candles in the windows. If we didn't chop down a single tree, and if we left all the pre-lit trees in their boxes in our basements, if no one sent Christmas cards, not even online, if there was no Christmas music in the stores, if the little drummer boy didn't pa-rum-pum-pum-pum, if there were no Christmas parties or open houses, if no one drank eggnog and nobody baked Christmas cookies, if we took away all those trappings, what would be left of Christmas? What would we do? How would we do Christmas? How will we find Christmas cheer? Would the meaning of Christmas be less real? Or might the meaning of Christmas then be more real than ever before? Try to imagine this. Try to imagine our whole Christmas celebration stripped down to telling the well-known story of a baby born in a manger in a town called Bethlehem. How about Christmas stripped down to reaching out to those in need, giving, and not a thought about receiving. Christmas, finding ways to feed the hungry, to shelter the homeless, to clothe the shivering, to employ the jobless, to welcome those seeking a place to stay. Imagine a Christmas as simple as all of us getting together to search the heavens and to search our minds and hearts and souls for a star to guide us finally to peace and mercy and justice. A Christmas as simple as people coming together to pray, to thank God for having chosen to leave heaven and leap down to earth and make his dwelling among us. A Christmas as simple as gathering at a table to sing joyful songs and to offer ourselves as the Christmas gifts to one another and to God. Imagine a Christmas as simple as sharing a meal of bread blessed and broken and sharing a sip from a cup of blessing. Imagine Christmas as simple as that. Advent is a time to practice the wisdom of that old saying, less is more. Less is more. Or as the spiritual writer Thomas Merton put it, Advent is the beginning of the end of everything in us that is not yet Christ. Let me give you that again. Advent is the beginning of the end of everything in us that is not yet Christ. Advent's a time not to hurry up, but to slow down and pause, to take a few deep breaths and be still before God. Advent's not a time for racing around. It's a time for waiting for what comes slowly, oh so painfully slowly. Advent's a time for waiting for what comes slowly and what comes only through patient waiting. Advent's a time to prayer. Yes, to talk to God, but perhaps even more so in the stillness, to listen for whatever it is that God might be whispering to you and you and you and you and me this Advent season. Advent's a time to curb our consumerism, a time to hear the cry of the poor and to reach out to them as generously as we can. Advent's not a time for filling up on things. Rather, it's a time for emptying out, a time to simplify and make room in our hearts for Jesus, who is still looking for a place to rest his head. Advent's a time, like every time and season, to be awake and alert and to watch for the coming of God in our lives, to look for the presence of God all around us, to seek the promise of God to be with us always, whether we're sick or healthy, whether we're in good times or bad, whether we're experiencing plenty or want, whether we're happy or sad. Jesus, Emmanuel, God is with us. Well, no need to worry. All those things I asked you to imagine to be gone, as soon as you walk out the doors of this church, right in your face. You're going to be right there, okay? And in whatever way any of those things do lead us to Jesus, go for it. But we need to ask God to help us not get confused. Not to confuse the holly and the hoopla, the giving and the getting, the carols and the cocktails, not to confuse all of that with the real meaning of Jesus, the real meaning of Christmas, which is simply Jesus. Advent should be for us the beginning of the end of everything in us that is not Christ. We have 4 weeks to prepare for Christmas. Pray that we let go so much of what we don't need. And at the same time, open our hearts and our arms to the coming of God among us.